The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, a cold, relentless Seattle rain that slipped under collars and into bones, the kind that made the whole city feel like it was holding its breath underwater. Mara sat at the corner table of the Harbor Light Cafe, the one tucked beneath the crooked neon crab sign that had flickered the same half-hearted red since 1987. The window beside her was salted with years of sea spray, distorting the view of the docks into something that looked half dream, half nightmare. Her coffee had gone cold so long ago the skin on top had wrinkled like old paint. She hadn't taken a sip in an hour. She was waiting for a ghost who had never learned how to be on time. 11 years ago, almost to the minute, Jonah had kissed her on that same pier outside, rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead, tasting like salt and the spearmint gum he always chewed when he was nervous. He'd cupped her face with hands that still smelled of diesel and wet rope and promised, back before the next tide, Mar. Swear it. Then he'd grinned that crooked, reckless grin that always made her knees stupid and walked backward down the gangway, waving until the running lights of the Northern Star swallowed him whole. They found the wheelhouse 2 weeks later, stove in and empty, bobbing like a dead gull off Destruction Island. After that, pieces kept washing up for months. Orange Life Ring, a child's plastic dinosaur that belonged to the cook's kid, one of Jonah's boots still laced tight. No bodies. The Coast Guard called it a loss with all hands. The town called it Tuesday. Mara came back every November 26th anyway. Same table, same cracked red vinyl seat that caught on her jeans. Same window where the gulls fought over French fries and cigarette butts. She told herself it was ritual, not hope. Hope was a luxury she'd sold off years ago for rent and groceries and the luxury of sleeping without waking up reaching for someone who wasn't there. Tonight the cafe smelled like wet wool and fryer grease and the ghost of someone's clove cigarettes. Old Pete the cook flipped burgers in the back, humming something tuneless that might have been Springsteen 2 decades past its prime. The waitress, Clara, whose mother used to own the place and whose daughter now poured coffee just like her, had stopped asking if Mara wanted anything years ago. She just left the pot on the table like an offering and retreated. Mara's fingers found the letter in her coat pocket the way they always did, muscle memory older than grief. The paper was soft now, almost fabric, edges feathered from being carried next to her heart through too many storms. Jonah's handwriting still looked impatient, slanted sharp to the right like it was trying to run off the page. If the sea keeps me, don't wait forever. But if you do wait and I know you, Mara Elise Carter, stubborn as barnacles wait by the window where the gulls fight over crumbs. I'll find my way back. I always do. Love you bigger than the Pacific. J. She'd laughed the first time she read it, laughed until she cried in the ferry bathroom on the ride home from the memorial they held without a body. Typical Jonah. Even his suicide note sounded like a dare. She traced the word always with her thumb until the ink smudged. The bell above the door gave its tired jingle. Boots on linoleum, slow, deliberate. Water dripping. She didn't look up. People came in, people left, the rain didn't care. But the footsteps stopped right beside her table, close enough that she caught the scent of Tide flats and cold iron. A shadow fell across the letter, long and dark. Mara's heart did something complicated, lurched, stalled, then hammered so hard she felt it in her teeth. She raised her eyes. He looked carved out and put back together wrong. Older, thinner, cheekbones sharp enough to cut fog. Salt had turned his dark curls the color of driftwood, and a new scar split his left eyebrow like someone had tried to erase him and missed. His coat hung from shoulders that had forgotten how to be broad. But the eyes, those impossible storm gray eyes ringed in lashes she used to tease him about, hadn't changed. They were looking at her like she was the first fixed point in a world that had spun off its axis. Jonah smiled, small and crooked and exactly the same, the left side rising a fraction slower because of the scar. Tide was late, he said, and his voice was gravel dragged across a decade of silence. The cafe tilted, sound sucked out of the room like water down a drain. Mara stood so fast her hip caught the table and coffee sloshed across the letter, bleeding the ink into soft blue ghosts. She slapped him. The crack echoed off the tin ceiling like a gunshot. Her palm burned, his head snapped sideways, silver-streaked hair falling across his face. Jonah didn't move to block it. He closed his eyes and took it full across the cheek, the way a man takes communion or punishment he's been rehearsing in his head for years. When he turned back, his eyes were bright and wet. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The words came out cracked, like he hadn't used them in so long they'd dried out. Mara's hand throbbed. Her voice, when it finally crawled out of her throat, was barely air. "You're late, I know." She looked down at the letter drowning in cold coffee, then back up at the man standing in front of her dripping Puget Sound onto the linoleum. Alive. Impossible. Here. Outside, the rain softened, turning from nails to fingertips on the roof. Mara stepped forward until her forehead rested against the soaked wool of his coat. He smelled like low tide and engine oil and something green and growing she couldn't name. His arms came around her slowly, carefully, like she was made of sea glass and might cut him if he held too tight. "Don't," she said into the hollow of his throat, voice shaking so hard it barely sounded like her, "ever make me wait by this fucking window again." Jonah's breath hitched, his hands fisted in the back of her coat like he was anchoring himself to the only real thing left in the world. "Never," he said against her hair. "Not ever again." And for the first time in 11 years, the rain sounded less like morning and more like the world washing itself clean.